in the sense that the president feels that this needs to be a significant investment that America needs to make so it can remain competitive. He doesn't want to see America in a decline on infrastructure that affects farmers and manufacturers and their ability to make product and get it to its destination. So he doesn't want a small package. He wants a major package.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, we love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. You're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 12th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's been very hot and tiring down here in the South. For the last 2 weeks on television, if you turn on any news cycle, you watch George Floyd be murdered every day of the week on television. Charlton, also in Virginia, we get an active military lieutenant leaving work pulled over at gunpoint by police because he's driving a brand new vehicle. And then even yesterday in Minnesota, Charlton, once again, a young black man, 20 years old, loses his life because he has expired tags. You know, it's an unfortunate thing that people don't understand that Black Lives Matter. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, and doctors, and first responders. Unfortunately, there were 2 black lives that they weren't able to save, Charlton.
Well, we want to wish everybody nothing but the best. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. It's better to have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, love pausing. It is hot in California. It's hot all over the country. It's still spring, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, just over the weekend, we saw why so many military veterans are in crisis as we watched police officers pull their guns on a police officer who had just left, military officer who had just left the base. Unfortunately, we lose over 24 military veterans a day to suicide in this country, Charlton. A horrific disease. And I saw the disrespect for our military over the weekend by our law enforcement people here in America. But we as a country need to do better by our military personnel in every aspect, Charlton. They serve this country. They protect this country. And we need to find a way to protect them when they're on duty and when they're no longer part of the active service, Charlton. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, but it doesn't seem to be enough, Charlton. We have so many Americans who do not care about the sanctity and mentality of our military veterans.
Well, we will do our best, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our military veterans and their loved ones. Also, I'm very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping to put people back to work. Just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. Also, very happy to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Man, it is hot, Big C. I did see some of the things that have happened also to our, I guess, military veteran, also some civilians, and I hope that we can get some type of help for everybody who's going through something, Big C. But I thought when everybody's focused on sports now, but when I saw the gentleman from the military was pulled over, and people, they chastised the great Colin Kaepernick and many NFL football players for taking a knee, yet one of our own servicemen was treated with such disrespect. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he was asking for a reason why he's being pulled over. He pulled into a lidded area at a gas station, Charlton, asking what did he do wrong. As an officer, you need to de-escalate a situation, not escalate a situation, Charlton.
Yeah.
Explain to the young man why you're pulling him over, instead of pulling your guns on him, demanding that he gets out of the car and get on the ground. He has his hands sticking out of the window, Charlton.
Yeah.
And you still will not de-escalate the situation. These officers even went to the point of quoting lines from movies like, "We will get you fried, we will put you in the electric chair," and telling him how tough it's going to be on him once he gets out of the car.
Wow.
They are threatening him while he's asking civil, calm questions, Charlton. And people always want to say, well, if he just complied, he was complying. But I can also understand the fear when police walk up to your car and guns are pulled at night because you're driving a new vehicle. They're saying that you committed a felony crime.
Yeah, I hope that the justice will come to light in that situation. It's amazing. You go off and you try to make our country free, to stay the land of the free, the home of the brave, and sometimes you're treated as if you committed a crime. And
Charlton, they treated black service members this way in the 40s in America. 80 years ago, black service members were treated the same way, with disrespect and low esteem. What you're saying is that this black man does not have the ability to function as a civil human being in America. You have on your military uniform with your name on it, that ID is right there. It has been very easy to make a call and make that statement. And then they're talking about, well, you created the problem because you were driving down the road at night, without tags on your car. I can't remember the last time someone bought a car, a brand new car, Charlton, and the tags were administered that day anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, they always give you kind of a dealer kind of tag. Yeah, it's all made of paper tag. And so obviously we know the dirt will come out in the wash, and hopefully there'll be a lot of wash soon in that situation. But I also want to go to the world of golf, and it's amazing that tournament has been the marquee tournament for the world of golf, I guess the Super Bowl of golf, and to have the 2021 Masters leaderboard, and Hideki Matsuyama, Big C, makes history as the first Japanese man to win a golf major. I didn't know it would have taken that long, but that's amazing that he pretty much took control. He wasn't in the lead until the weekend, and then he was able to just play like an expert, like he had been there many, many times before. And it's amazing the calm that he had, a stellar ball striking command of Augusta National, unmatched by anyone in the field over the final 2 rounds. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it was a bittersweet moment. You think about the hate crimes that occurred in Georgia just a few weeks ago, where those 6 Asian women were assassinated, Charlton, by a white assailant, and the sheriff said he had a bad day because he only killed 6 Asian women. This is bittersweet to have the first golfer of Japanese descent win the Masters basically on that same soil that those women were assassinated on, Charlton. And here's a young man who was inspired by Tiger Woods 16 years ago when he turned on the television, got up early one morning, Charlton, to watch the final round of the Masters, and Tiger Woods won that. At that point, he decided that's what he wanted to do. And his dreams came true on Sunday, Charlton, being able to hoist that silver statuette trophy from the Master, being the first Japanese golfer in history
Yeah.
to win at that all-exclusive white club in Georgia, Charles.
Yeah, he wanted a club he couldn't join, Big C. He was 10 under, the coveted 54 hole, leading to his first green jacket and major championship, winning the 2021 Masters. He won it by 1 stroke. It could have been 2 strokes on Sunday, but I guess he wanted to make it a little bit closer for the people trying to catch up to a Big C, and he missed that 1 putt and ended up knocking it in from about a foot away. But for the 85th Masters, not only his first green jacket, but the first major championship won by a Japanese golfer. And I'm sure as Japan's going to host the next Olympics, Big C, he may be the one that comes out in the green jacket. But we were just talking about golf and how it's affected people all over the world playing the game. Not everybody's going to play it as great as Matsuyama, Big C, but it's amazing that Johnson, that won it last year by going 20 under, Big C, didn't even make the cut. And this year, a man wins it by going only 10 under, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Matsuyama, it was his time. I mean, sometimes the stars line up perfectly, Charlton, for events in history that we need to all recognize and pay homage to. With all the horrific hate crimes going on against Asian Americans in the United States, Charlton, to have someone be able to hoist one of the most proudest, prestigious individual trophies in America, being a man of Asian descent, Charlton, it has to be heartwarming to that culture of all those people represented by that, Charlton. And maybe America will take note of that we deserve equality in this country, Charlton. Because of race and ethnicity, we should not be at each other's throats literally in this country and treat each other with the utmost of respect. And he and the Asian culture, Charlton, deserve all of that from his magnificent win at the Masters.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that feel, he was asked, everybody has their own questions to ask, and of course that's what media does. But some a reporter was asking him, what does this mean to his native land? And he says, well, I'm focused on me right now because there's a lot of other golfers out here. If you're not laser focused, you won't be the one here giving the interviews at the end when you put on the green jacket, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, you always, as a reporter, it's hollow. What question has not been asked by reporters when it comes to interviews after someone has won a championship? It's almost like they need to go back and retool themselves, because when you ask questions that are the obvious answer, Charlton, you don't get that splash answer that you're looking for. And to ask someone how they feel in a very momentous moment, there's joy and jubilation involved, and you want and you like to be able to share that with everybody that's important with you that helps you get to that moment.
Yeah.
You don't have enough time to pay homage to all those people. So when a reporter asks that, I feel that reporters have not done their homework.
Yeah, so what does it mean to your native land? I don't know everybody in my native country, but hopefully it may inspire some people. When you think about some of the Asian nations, we see Y.E. Yang of South Korea in 2009 was a PGA champion. And I'm really proud of the golf world. I just think it's ironic they opened up with a tribute to Lee Elder, and he's not in the best of health. It was way overdue. And at the same time, to win the Masters with a Japanese person who is non-English speaking, and of all places in Georgia, where they're trying to tell people, if you're not Caucasian, if you're a person of color, then they want to get rid of your right to vote. You think they want to get rid of the people who don't speak English too, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this was a total slap in the face for the state of Georgia, who just passed this anti-voting bill, Charlton, that wants to restrict people of color in voting and reduce voting hours at polling stations for them to have their grandest event of all, Charlton, the Masters, which is a worldwide event, and that be put on Showcase, and that same channel that puts it on Showcase still has to talk about the anti-voting laws in Georgia.
Yeah, they didn't mention it. Isn't that something? It'd be a great time for the universe to say, wait a minute, there's no difference in people, only skin melanin. But ironically, hello, friends. No one brought it up, Big C, calling people friends, but you won't bring up what some of your friends, can't do. I want to look at another golfer, and again, what a great tournament by Matsuyama. A lot of pressure to hold that lead all Sunday. I don't think he ever relinquished the lead on Sunday, Big C, and that's a great deal of focus. So congratulations on that. And then you look at also Masters rookie Will Zalatoris, Big C. He finished 9 under, and the runner-up and the breakout moment. He's only 24 years old. He was followed by a pair of major championships on the leaderboard, guys like Jordan Spieth, who I thought would be a little bit more competitive start to finish, but he had his moments and it just didn't close the gap. And then I just see another young man on his first time ever at the Masters to come one shot from going into overtime in a playoff. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Tellitore, I mean, you really got to admire this young man. And ironically, a couple of years ago, I was out on the driving range with a very splendid small man, Charlton, who can hit the hell out of a golf ball.
Yeah.
And to see his rise to this level at the Masters, Charlton, it was wonderful to say, hey, I was sitting there talking with this guy just a couple of years ago on the driving range.
Yeah, on the driver. I hope you weren't being his caddy, Big C, if that makes sense to you. But isn't it amazing? I look at someone like Bryson DeChambeau, who's never finished higher than 10th and down there in Augusta, Big C. But everyone can rave at how far Bryson DeChambeau can drive the ball, Big C, well over 350 yards. But then you have a guy who's very thin. Some people say 165 pounds wet, as Zalatoris, Big C. It shows it's not how big you are, it's how powerful you can make connection with the ball, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, it's all about you drive for show and you putt for dough. And here's DeChambeau, when you have narrow fairways, that driving for show does not work. If you're in a driving competition, yes, it'll work, it looks pretty. But when you're on the golf course, Charlton, it's all about control and ball placement.
Yeah.
And when you don't have the ability to do that because you're steroided up and just trying to knock the cover off the ball, you're never going to win a major tournament.
Well, I can't confirm or deny what someone puts in their Cheerios, Big C. I know, it was Popeye. He used to eat a lot.
He's from California, wasn't he?
Hey, I can't confirm or deny where he's from. I haven't seen his birthday yet. But I know that it was a guy it was Popeye the Sailor Man that would always eat the spinach, and that made him a lot stronger. And no one ever accused him of not doing things naturally, if that makes sense to you. But yeah, Matsuyama, Big C, 10 under, the Masters champion 2021. Zalatoris finished -9. And then Jordan Spieth had his moments, Big C. I know he's kind of America's favorite right now. He finished -7, but he also had some moments where he just did not play well. Shuffley finished at -7 as well, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I had picked Jordan Spieth going into the tournament, Charlton, and his first couple of rounds really dogged him as he went through the course.
Yeah.
I mean, he made an epic comeback there on the final day, but you get so far behind in the hole, it's just hard to dig out of when you have golfers playing consistently in front of you.
Yeah, it's amazing how golf, again, played all over the world, and I really appreciate Matsuyama, the way he can go back with that green jacket. I know some guys, when I was a young man growing up in the club, they would wear a green jacket too, Big C, but it wasn't on the golf course. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everything is green out on the golf course, but like I said, it was great to see a man of color once again hoist that green jacket.
Yeah, it's a nice thing for diversity, especially at the Masters, where everybody's excluded unless you're Caucasian, Big C. But even speaking about Japan, a significant part of Japanese culture, both traditional sports as sumo and then martial arts, and then Western sports like baseball, and then even association football are popular for both spectators and also a lot of the people that are playing sports too. So obviously some people are saying it may lead him to $1 billion in revenue over his golf lifetime. Maybe he already has $1 billion if he has Bitcoin, Big C, but whether he makes a lot of money or not everybody comes back after winning the Masters and becoming great again. Johnson didn't even make the cut. I just wish him nothing but the best going forward, and hopefully he'll have a great run at being extra special on the golf course. It's all fair and love and war. Big C, I wanna touch on, we'll get to some basketball a little bit later, but there's a thing that you talked about in the world of sports, and I know the Minnesota Twins, as well as the Timberwolves and the Minnesota Wild, they're putting their game on pause because of what happened over the weekend with the young man that lost his life at the police shooting. I guess the officer that was so well trained, I guess, couldn't identify whether it was a taser or a gun that was being grabbed. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, all officers carry their gun in their strong hand. If you're right-handed, your gun is on your right side. If you're left-handed, your gun is on your left side. And your taser is always in that opposite hand, as they call it, the weak hand, Charlton. And this is a long-running standing officer on in Minnesota on the police force, Charlton. Yeah. And to say that she didn't recognize that she had pulled out her gun instead of a taser. And there's a huge weight differential, Charlton, also, between a gun and a taser, and a size differential. That taser is a lot fatter in the butt of the gun and the entire shaft of the gun than a gun is.
Yeah.
But once again, we witnessed a black person losing their lives, Charlton, for something that at best is a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
Period. A misdemeanor. He had an expired tag, and he was not allowed to live because he had an expired tag. We talked about the officer in Virginia who had just bought a new vehicle and had not been tagged as of yet. And yet he gets pepper sprayed and handcuffed because as a black man, you're not supposed to be able to do these things in American society unless you've done something criminally.
Yeah.
We have been so dehumanized as a culture. I mean, for 2 weeks, America has watched George Floyd get murdered over and over and over. And yet his defense team for Chauvin is telling America that George Floyd was responsible for his own death.
Yeah.
That he was responsible for putting his own knee on his neck and choking him out for 9.5 minutes, Charlton. Derek Chauvin had nothing to do with George Floyd's death. I mean, America needs to have a woke moment, not just here and there, but a continuous woke moment to say that black lives do matter, that you cannot have this much injustice against a culture of people for doing something that's really not criminal, Charlton, because George Floyd bought a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
And he died over it, Charlton. This young man had an expired tag, and he died over it. We saw the lieutenant from the Army, Charlton, buy a new vehicle, and he got pepper sprayed over it, Charlton.
Yeah. I know, that's why we talk about it, Big C. I know a lot of people won't focus on it as much, but I just hope that, as we always know, the dirt will come out in the wash. I want to just contrast that story of what happened with expired tags and then having a dealer license plate as opposed to his own license plate that usually comes from the Department of Motor Vehicles about 30 days or so after you have the new vehicle, Big C. Kansas City Chiefs assistant Brett Reed charged with felony DUI, and the charge just happened, Big C. Today's Monday. I believe the accident was right around the 5th of February, just before the Super Bowl, before Super Bowl 55. So it took about 67 days or so, give or take a day or two, for felony DUI to be assessed to a former Kansas City Chiefs assistant, Coach Brett Reed, the son of Andy Reid, Big C, charged with a felony driving while intoxicated for his involvement with a crash earlier this year that left a 5-year-old girl critically injured. Now, I just want to contrast that with a man that was pulled over, that had a misdemeanor, and within a matter of moments his life was over. Okay? The Reed gentleman, Caucasian, it took about 67 days after the law enforcement shows up at the scene of the crime, after the 2 young girls were taken to the hospital. It takes about 67 days to even come back with a charge, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, you can't even contrast that. You can't even quantify that. They did not cuff up Brett Reed at the scene of that accident. They didn't pull a gun on Brett Reed at the scene of that accident. They didn't tell Brett Reed that they would potentially kill him at the scene of that accident. There's no contrast in that. This is black and white. Brett Reeves was white, okay? All 3 of these other gentlemen were black. And there's a huge disparity on how black people are treated by law enforcement versus how white people are treated with law enforcement. When you're black with law enforcement, they kill you on the spot because the person that's writing the report is alive, and that's the only report that matters, period.
Yeah, I know they're even having the conversation where I saw some of the footage of what happened in Minnesota. Just like George Floyd, there were people saying, well, why did he try to resist law enforcement? It looked like he was trying to get away, and that's when they kept yelling, stun, 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 and then they shot him. And again, that's over a misdemeanor. But then you have Brett Reed, who 2 young girls went to the hospital through ambulance, Big C. They didn't drive themselves and check themselves in. And Brett Reed was allowed to just kind of get away with things. Whatever report they did, it took almost 67 days to even charge him way after the fact, Big C. And the ironic thing is, I know we cover sports, but this is a bigger sports story because he's a coach on a football team that had just won the Super Bowl and then ended up losing the Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs. If convicted, Reed would face a maximum sentence of 7 years. And Reed, the son of Andy Reid, the head coach for the Chiefs, and Monday afternoon released after posting a $100,000 bond as part of his bond release, was ordered not to consume alcohol or visit any establishment where alcohol is primarily the item sold, Big C. He must also report a dependency services clinic for pretrial supervision. While he gets all of those different avenues for freedom, yet another young man loses his life because he had, I guess they said, expired tags on his vehicle. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, Brett Reeves driving while under the influence and also on narcotic drugs, Charlton, gets a slap on the wrist from a judge. Black men get killed in the street. Reed gets to go home. They get to go to the cemetery. We witness it on television. And all of a sudden, you start criminalizing the black person who is killed, Charlton. Every time the black person is criminalized.
Yeah.
Well, if he had complied, they had him holding him down in the car. She reaches around the other officers and shoots him, Charlton. We saw George Floyd being strangled for 9.5 minutes on the street. And they said if he just complied. He couldn't get up. There was 3 officers on his back.
Yeah.
And so they went against every ethics that police officers are trained under. There are great police officers in this country,
Oh, yeah.
deal with a lot of them every day. Great police officers. But when we see these incidents, it's not about bad police training, Charlton. It's about bad people. These people are damn criminals with a badge on. And to sit there and say this blue line, can't cross this blue line, got to protect the criminal because he's wearing a badge, Charlton, that's what's wrong with America.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with America, that you do not value black people. As I always say, the Constitution is the crux of that. If you take the First Amendment and you take the 13th Amendment, Charlton, they both apply against black people. When they talk about we the people of the people, you're allowed to speak that freely. And then all of a sudden in the Constitution you declare black people 2/3 of a human being. So you're not killing a person when they do that. A dog has more rights than a human being. There was a University of Tennessee linebacker that was suspended 2 weeks ago because he abused his girlfriend's cat. He abused the damn cat and lost his scholarship, okay? You kill a black man because he's got expired tags on his car, or he buys a cigarette, which we don't know if he knew that was a counterfeit $20 bill, but it cost both of them their lives, Charlton.
Yeah, and I want to just, because the gentleman also, the military gentleman that was pulled over, and he had his fatigues on when he was pulled over, so officer kind of, you would think you would understand, okay, this person was a service member, not that that should matter, but that's a clue. And when I go back to the read, this for people who say, well, he should have complied, or he should have listened, or he should have whatever. The analysis of the crash indicated that Reed, who's 36 years old at the time, that he was driving 84 miles per hour. And it gave him just 1.9 seconds before his Dodge Ram collided with 2 parked vehicles on the ramp. It was a Chevy Impala and a Chevy Traverse, Big C. Now, just keep that in mind. You're driving 84 miles per hour to get onto a highway. I think maximum speed limit in most places is 65 miles per hour. So why you got to get up to almost 90 miles per hour just to get on the highway doesn't make any sense. But the point is, he's out. He's going to be able to go to trial. Most likely they'll find a way to let him off because they charge him with a felony and they probably won't convict him. They'll say, well, we would have convicted on a misdemeanor. Just the last thing I want to make about that before we come up on the Big C pause. The Army or the military gentleman that was questioned and harassed and threatened with his life, Big C, was not driving almost 90 miles per hour. He was stopped. But Andy Reid happens to be Caucasian, and he was driving nearly 90 miles per hour when he had the crash. And he's out today, Big C, and they're just telling him, make sure you don't drink before your trial, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, we always know that there's 2 phases of justice in America. There's white justice, then there's just us, period. I mean, you get a black man that damages 2 people like that, Charlton, 2 children, he's going to jail that night. He's not going home to his family. He's going to jail, and he's going to remain in jail. Brett Reeves got white skin privilege when he almost killed those 2 young girls.
Yeah.
You think about going on a ramp, Charlton. It's normally about 45 miles an hour to easement to get onto a freeway. Then you accelerate into traffic.
Yeah.
You're doing twice the normal speed to merge into traffic. and you're not seeing these cars parked on the side of the freeway, that tells me right off the back that you're in a drunken stupor, that you cannot even see.
Yeah.
2 cars. You run over 2 cars. But, you know, we can sit here and talk about Brett Reeves all day long. He's alive, Charlton. Those 2 black men are not alive. And they did not do anything close to as heinous as what Brett Reeves did. They didn't injure other people, Charlton. George Floyd didn't physically harm anybody. And the young man in Minneapolis yesterday, he didn't physically harm anybody.
No.
They were both sitting there shackled with misdemeanor situations at best. You can write a ticket on the spot and tell them to appear.
Yeah.
On both of them, Charlton. But yet you decide to murder them, to take their lives, Charlton, over a misdemeanor. We're not talking about felonies that Brett Reeves is charged with. A white man gets charged with a felony, he goes home. A black man gets stopped for a misdemeanor, you're allowed to kill him.
Virginia cops pepper sprayed a black and Latino Army officer who had hands raised during the traffic stop. Second Lieutenant Cara Narzio, Big C, an African-American and Latino man who was in uniform when officers ordered him to exit the Chevrolet Tahoe as he held up his hands through the driver's side window outside of a local gas station. U.S. Army officers suing 2 Virginia police officers after December traffic stop in which the 2 officers drew their gunpoint. At gunpoint, their weapons pepper sprayed him and used slang to suggest that he would face execution as he purposely held both hands aloft in attempts to defuse the situation. What's going on? Nazario asked the officer who shouted at him, "Get out of the SUV," as they approached, guns drawn. What's going on? The gentleman asked again. "You're fixing to ride lightning, son," etc., 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 like the Green Mile. Honestly, he said he was afraid to get out. Nazario told the officers, "Yeah, you should be," one retorted. Again, he was out and complying. Andy Reid, law enforcement, said he was going almost 90 miles per hour when he had a crash, and they're just telling him to stay away from a bar before you have your day in court. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what's going on in the sports universe. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports on, and I really do appreciate the growth with Big C Sports. Also, I want to say thank you, Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Big C, every day we celebrate the accomplishments of these inspirational lessons of African American athletes. Every pro team's Jackie Robinson, September 17th, 1953. The great Ernie Banks began his legendary Chicago Cubs career. Banks once said that before the majors, quote, "My whole world was in the black community. When the Cubs called me up, I really didn't want to go," end of quote. He debuted September 17th, marked the first appearance of an African-American player for the franchise. Banks started every game at shortstop, Big C, for the Cubs in 1954, finishing second in the National League Rookie of the Year voting and 16th in the National League MVP voting. Banks would go on to win Most Valuable Player awards 1958 and 1959. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Ernie Banks, Charlton, everybody recognizes him as Mr. Cubs. You think about a pro organization, Charlton, that you identify with, and it's a black man, and that's the Chicago Cubs. You think about being the first black athlete that everyone in a city recognizes you as the face of an organization.
Yeah.
Everybody knew him as the laughable Cubs, Charlton, a team that went 108 years without winning a World Series.
Yep.
But during Ernie Banks' days with the Chicago Cubs, they were the lovable Cubs, Charlton. This man, you think about how well he performed in a world of adversity, Charlton, through segregation.
Yep.
And he did not let it bother him. He achieved all the highest pinnacles as an individual on the mound.
He was amazing, Big C. He was an excellent defensive player at 2 positions. Shortstop, 1953 to 1961, and first base from 1962 to 1971. At the former position, he led the league in fielding percentage 3 times, picking up the Gold Glove Award in 1960 when he led the National League shortstop in fielding percentage, double plays, games, putouts, and assists, Big C. As a first baseman, he led the league in putouts 5 times, assists 3 times, and double plays and fielding percentage once, compiling a .994 fielding percentage. That's like batting with a laser beam, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we in history, Charlton, through all of the accolades of all the great athletes, is that they forget to raise the pinnacle for the black athlete.
Yeah.
To show how inspiring and dominant that they were, Charlton, even in the early years of sports. That greatness goes unrecognized when they turn on the sports shows and they talk about the exploits of the athletes of today.
Yeah.
They fail to pay homage to all the great black athletes who were trailblazers, Charlton, to allow the opportunity for the young, successful athletes of today.
Yeah.
When I think about Ernie Banks, and I watched him, Charlton, many times in my younger years, and, he was one of those great players that you look at. He was charismatic. He was tall and slender and a powerful individual on and off the mound, Charlton, because of what he had to revere in life.
Yep.
And then take that and translate it to greatness, Charlton, on the baseball diamond. People don't understand how great black athletes were during that era.
Yeah.
Because of what you had to face in your personal life.
Yeah, he did a lot on and off the sports diamond, Big C. It was at bat that Banks really excelled, though, when you think about it, Big C. However, he hit more than 40 home runs 5 times, leading the league twice in home runs, twice in RBIs. He was a lifetime 274 hitter, total 2,583 hits, 1,305 runs scored, and 1,636 runs batted in, Big C. It was on May 12th, 1970. He hit his 500th home run of his career, becoming just the 9th player to reach the plateau. And Banks was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1977, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they talk about the power-hitting shortstop of the modern era of baseball. With the Cal Ripken, well-renowned. Alex Rodriguez, well-renowned. Derek Jeter, Charlton. But you think about Ernie Banks, who started his career as a shortstop and ended up in the 500 home run club.
Yep.
It shows the power and athleticism of this young man, Charlton. And think about this. He lost 2 years of his baseball career, Charlton, serving in the military service for this country that really doesn't respect black people, as we saw the lieutenant in Virginia being pulled over at gunpoint by law enforcement because he bought a brand new vehicle legally.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens, Big C. I just appreciate all the people that came and dominated, and oftentimes you hear about Jackie Robinson and Hammer and Hank as people want to pay homage to those great players, but there's so many. There's a plethora of players that deserve the same type of homage. Tonight's schedule, Big C, from Major League Baseball, April the 12th, you have San Diego at the Pittsburgh, and the Pirates. The Seattle is at the Baltimore Orioles, New York Yankees at the Toronto Blue Jays. You have the beautiful, I love when I talk about the Texas Rangers, Big C, and Governor Abbott. They're at Tampa Bay, Big C, in the Seattle Mariners. They're at Atlanta. I want to come back and talk to you about Atlanta in the game with Philadelphia. And the Chicago Cubs at Milwaukee Brewers, Big C. Washington Nationals at St. Louis Cardinals. Detroit Tigers at the Houston Astros. Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim at Kansas City Royals. Cleveland at the White Sox of Chicago. The Oakland A's are going to be playing down in Arizona. And you have Cincinnati at San Francisco. Boston, well, that game's postponed in Minnesota, the Twin Cities. And then you have the Philadelphia, that game's postponed in the New York Mets. There was a game in Atlanta, and I know you and I talk about, do you want the strike zone covered by a computer or artificial intelligence? And I like when they can make mistakes. And the reason I'm not really against it, it's just if you don't do it right, why have it? There was a clear play where a player came in to score for Philadelphia. He did not even touch home plate. They showed the replay, Big C, probably at least 10 times from at least 3 different angles, Big C. And everyone with an eye and a magnifying glass could see that the runner never touched home plate. He was tagged out. They showed it about 10 different times. I guess they made a phone call to somebody, and they said safe, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, and I'm always of the belief, if you're not going to use something accurately, don't use it at all.
Yeah.
If you're not going to enact replay in baseball and use it properly, basketball or football, get rid of it, Charlton. We've seen too many games decided by situations like that. The runner was clearly out, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
His front leg never touched the plate. But yet they want to say, no, he's safe. I mean, that call to New York that you make, you have to make it. And you have to be looking at the same replay that everybody else in America is looking at. There were a couple of hundred sets of eyeballs, a couple of million sets of eyeballs on that game last night, Charlton. And every one of them saw the same thing. You're going to believe me or your lying eyes, Charlton. This is reminiscent of the George Floyd going on, Derek Chauvin murder trial of George Floyd going on in Minneapolis. We all watched that white officer kill that black man on the street for 9.5 minutes. But yet they're going to tell the jury that what you see is inaccurate.
Yeah.
Because he killed himself. He was going to die anyway. And that's basically what you saw in that baseball game last night. Well, he was in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So since he was in the neighborhood, we're going to call him safe.
Yeah. And the fact that it happened, they have Hank Aaron's number out there etched in the beautiful in the outfield, I guess right around center field. They had the number 44 etched. They were wearing the throwback jerseys for paying homage to Hank Aaron, Big C. They're red, white, and blue colors. Now they're kind of going to red, black, and gray. Or they even have some blue in it too. But it was just how you don't see, your eyes have deceived you again, and to happen to the home team is incredible. I guess it shows all fair in love and war, Big C. And just looking at some of the baseball power rankings for the top couple of teams, you have the Dodgers coming in at number 1. Clayton Kershaw had a second consecutive dominant outing, and they blanked the Max Scherzer and the Nationals, Big C. You also have the Padres, who look very, very strong. Both of these teams come out of the National League West, and they make history this weekend, Big C, and Arlington began with San Diego's native Joe Musgrove, grew up down in San Diego County, throwing the first no-hitter in the history of the Padres franchise, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's a young man who grew up, within a stone's throw of the ballpark down there, Charlton. He grew up a Padres fan, and to be able to have the franchise first no-hitter in the history of that organization, Charlton, by a kid who grew up there, what a momentous feat.
Yeah, it's a momentous feat, Big C. It was a 2-0 win to complete the sweep over the Rangers of Texas, Big C. The Yankees have found their groove again, Big C. They're the number 3 seed right now for this week. They've had their latest impressive showing of the teams that made our top rankings as well, Big C. So they had a chance to get over the top against the Tampa Bay. And then the Twins, of course, they're on pause tonight because of what happened that we already talked about. It's always fun when the Twins, get back into the groove of things playing baseball. When you think about it, it gives us a chance to talk about the aces, Nelson Cruz. Think about this. He's 40, Big C. He takes naps in the middle of the day, and then he comes out and does his thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I like to look at the Twins situation here, Charlton, where all the professional teams in the state of Minnesota saying, we can't go out there tonight because we are citizens of this state, just like all the other people that are hurting.
Yeah.
And sports is the only thing in America that people have a tendency to listen to when something is going wrong in society.
That's right.
To have the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball saying, again and again, we're witnessing the same thing. Innocent black people being killed, Charlton, just trying to live. And it's a total injustice. And maybe, white people get nervous when you start affecting their pockets. You're going to get a lot of people saying, well, sports should not get involved in this. It should be in the middle of it. So what you're saying is that these sports players and athletes are not human beings. And when they take a stance and say, we're not going to deal with this. The NBA did it last year in the bubble when they decided not to play games, Charlton. And this is a reoccurring theme in America for decades. And at some point, what will be the threshold? Will Major League Baseball have to say, we're going on strike until we get some justice in action here in America? Till we can sit down and start changing some laws to make all people equal in this country. Because when you're cheering with your uniform on, Charlton, you're thought of as a superhero. But the minute you take that uniform off, Charlton, you can be a victim just like anybody else on the street. And I think that a lot of professional athletes and collegiate athletes, Charlton, are getting more and more worried about the heinous actions of society in America.
Yeah, a lot of times they're doing the best they can to bring attention to it, and oftentimes they'll say, we're not going to play, we're going to put things on pause just to make sure that people don't take it for granted. And I really appreciate the fact that Major League Baseball and the other sports leagues are doing the same thing they can, Big C, to bring attention to something and not just pretend, well, it's not our situation.
Major League has been in the forefront, Charlton. If you think about it, they moved the All-Star game a week or so ago because of voting obstruction laws that were passed down in the state of Georgia to make it more difficult for people of color to vote because they didn't like the turnout. And they said, you people can't be deciding elections against the people that we want.
Yeah.
And now that you get all three of the major league sports in America, if football had been in season, Charlton, I would imagine that the NFL would have postponed games also to respect the other brothers in the other leagues, Charlton. But this is the only way that we can get something done in America. You think about how boisterous America was when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, Charlton, against social injustice in America. And 5 years ago, Charlton, when they banned him from the NFL, what he took a knee for and telling America about, Charlton, is still very prevalent every day in America. We see it. And yet they want to say, well, it's justified. And when that police lieutenant came out today and said, well, it was an accidental shooting. You know, I truly believe it was accidental. It was a damn traffic stop that cost the man his life.
Yeah, that's why the dirt will come out in the wash, Big C. We all got to keep our heads out of the sand. I want to step back into the Power 5. You have the Astros coming in, Big C. They made a bold statement. They opened this season by not being nice to the Oakland A's of Northern California. At 35-9, outscoring the A's 35-9 on a 4-game sweep in Oakland. That's not very nice, Big C.
Well, I mean, the A's have been struggling to start the season, Charlton. The Astros have been one of the more solid organizations in baseball over the last 5 years. I know a lot of people want to revel about this alleged cheating scandal that they did a couple of years ago when they won the World Series. Regardless of all of that, no one is downplaying the New England Patriots for the years of alleged cheating with them filming other teams, Charlton, and stealing signals. But when you look at the Houston Astros, this was a team that was half minority, so it got more backlash and vitriol than the New England Patriots did.
Very well said. They never deflated any baseballs last I checked. It's off at 11 war. And just finishing out Major League Baseball, rest of the field, the Braves coming in number 6 in Big C's power rankings, followed by the White Sox at number 7. The A's are, actually the Reds are number 8. The Tampa Bay Rays are number 9. And the Mets are number 10 in Big C's power rating. And all the other teams, we'll deal with them as they crack that top 10. It's all fair in love and war. I want to touch on, you know, it's amazing how you can watch so many games and you have players that are getting ready for the NFL draft pick and everyone's working out and over, you know, trying to get their extra reps in, working out with their agents, trying to see where they're going to go, talking to GMs around the country. But I want to take a thought and get Big C's thoughts on the top 7 quarterbacks available and what could be an historic NFL draft class, Big C. I really mean that, with 5 quarterbacks possibly taken in the first 12 overall picks, Big C. I want to take a look below at ranking the top 7 quarterbacks in the 2021 NFL draft. I know everybody has their own opinion in the final 12 minutes, Big C, of our program today. Number 7, I'm going to start with Kellen Mond, Big C. This kid played at Texas A&M. He's out of IMG Academy High School and in beautiful Florida, Big C. But his 2020 stats, he was 188 of 297. That's 63.3% completion, Big C. 2,282 yards passing, 19 touchdowns. He only had 3 interceptions. And one thing to know, that Kellen Mond was a 4-year starter at Texas A&M and improving his numbers with each of those seasons in the SEC, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, of all the quarterbacks in the top 7 and all the pundits in the NFL draft are talking about, Kellen Mond gets the least amount of respect. He's the only quarterback in the draft in the top 7 that is a 4-year collegiate starter. And his numbers evolved every year that he was in college. He wasn't a 1 or 2 year wonder. He was a 4-year consistent quarterback, Charlton. And when I look at him stature-wise and playing ability, he reminds me a lot of Jason Campbell, a quarterback that the Washington football team drafted in the first round years ago out of the University of Auburn.
Yeah, he's a good player. And the fact that he did it in the SEC competition, and to be from Texas, you know they kind of get that same officiating that robbed the Atlanta Braves at home against the incomers from Philadelphia. It's all fair and level war. Number 6 on the list, Big C, the great Kyle Trask out of University of Florida, the Gators, 2020 stats. He was 301 out of 437 attempts. That's a lot of passing, Big C. He completed 68.9% of his completions, Big C. 4,283 yards passing, 43 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. One thing you know about Kyle Trask, he's in the hunt for the Heisman Trophy year after year. He helped the Florida Gators offense put up some astounding numbers, Big C. They came to within a touchdown of knocking off Alabama in the SEC championship game. And then think about this. Throwing for 400 or more yards in 5 of its 11 regular season games in 2020, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, what astonished me so much about Kyle Trask, that he became a starter at the beginning of the season for the first time in 7 years, this last season at the University of Florida.
Yeah.
So when you talk about students of the game, I don't know if there's any quarterback coming out of draft that's more prescient or mentally prepared than what Kyle Trask is, because he had to sit behind a great quarterback in high school in De'Aaron King.
Yep.
He had to sit behind a couple great quarterbacks at the University of Florida, Charlton, and he only got a chance to start last year because of injury. But once he got a chance to start, Charlton, it showed how much a student he was of the playbook.
Yeah, you throw the ball 437 times, you complete 68.9% of your passes. You know he has a nice arm, Big C. Number 5 on the list, the great Mac Jones out of Alabama, 2020 stats. He was 311 out of 402 passing, completed 77.4% of his passing, Big C, 4,500 yards. At Alabama, I thought they were a running school, Big C, 41 touchdowns. He only threw 4 interceptions, of course, throwing some of those receptions to a Heisman Trophy winner, Big C. One thing to know, the great Mac Jones, Big C, was initially projected as a mid to late first-round pick in many of the mock drafts, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he and Kyle Trask have quite similar backgrounds, Charlton, when you think about them. Both of these quarterbacks went to these universities in the SEC, Florida and Alabama, and they were behind some of the top recruited quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah.
And they had to sit and wait their time. Both of them got an opportunity in their junior years, Charlton, when the starting quarterbacks were injured. Tua was injured in Alabama, and Franks was injured down in Georgia.
Yeah.
But once they took the helm as a starting quarterback, Charlton, they had history-making seasons for both of those universities. Mac Jones, I really like what I've seen with him in this past year. I think he's a guy that will step into the NFL and will shock a lot of people. I think he's an upgrade from a former Jets #1 draft pick, Chad Pennington, out of the University of Marshall.
Yeah, he's a good-looking player, Big C. We'll see how it works out for him undrafted. Number 4, Trey Lance, Big C, North Dakota State, the Bison, 2020 stats. Think about it. He was only 15 and 30, 50% completions, 149 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. One thing to know that Trey Lance played just 1 game in 2020. With a 17-game resume, though, at the FCS level, he'll require more time to learn and develop before he's even given the reins of an NFL offense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, he's the X-factor wild card when it comes to quarterbacks in the draft. A lot of upside potential, but we've seen that in the past with quarterbacks, that they had a lot of upside potential, but they could not process the game at that next level. You know, one of the things he has boding well for him is the 2 previous quarterbacks that played in front of him at North Dakota State are both in the NFL. The kid Wentz, who was down in Philadelphia, and the backup quarterback down with the Chargers was also down there at North Dakota State, and they won collegiate championships at that division. I think he's more of an athlete than both of those quarterbacks, Charlton, so he has to go to the right system that will fit his skill.
Yeah, he'll find a system and they'll build something around him, Big C. The number 3, the great Zach Wilson out of BYU, 2020 stats. He was 247 and 336, completed 73.5% of his passes, 3,692 yards passing, 33 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. One thing to know, while he's 3rd in the rankings here, Big C, most mock drafts currently have Wilson as his 2nd quarterback off the board. He threw 33 touchdown passes, up from 11 in 2019, only 3 interceptions. He also had 10 rushing scores and showed off his athleticism, and he's able to manipulate the pocket. Maybe not like Steve Young, but good enough, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you have to be enamored with his overall ability. What impresses me with Wilson the most is his arm strength and the angles that he can throw a football at. He reminds me a lot of an athletic Jeff George, who went #1 overall years ago out of the University of Illinois. He was the #1 high school recruit quarterback in the country. He never had that breakout year in the NFL. He always lived on his potential. I think that Zach Wilson is a more mature Jeff George and will deliver at the next level.
And you think about number 2, Big C, the great Justin Fields. Now, keep in mind that the great Justin Fields, they played, I think, 6 regular games, Big C, and then they had the 2 playoff games, Big C. But Justin Fields out of Ohio State, 2020 stats, 158 of 225, 70% completion, Big C, 2,100 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He has the skills necessary to excel in a modern offense. He's a pinpoint passer and a threat out of the pocket if things break down. He throws with good velocity and spiral. He also made the playoffs, led Ohio State to 2 Big Ten championships in the playoffs his last 2 years, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, there's 2 outstanding black quarterbacks, Charlton, that I like to compare Justin Fields to. The late Steve McNair and Aaron Brooks, who played with the Saints, Charlton, and led them to the playoffs. When I look at his athletic ability and his mobility, the ability to run, that's the late Steve McNair out of Alcorn State, that power. And also when I think about that arm strength that Aaron Brooks possessed, Charlton, when he was quarterbacking the Saints and getting them into the playoffs in the early part of his career. A lot of people forget about him in the NFL. But this is a young man, whoever drafts him is going to have their next starting quarterback for 12 years.
Oh, he's amazing. And the man played the championship game with some bruised ribs against Alabama, and that affected his play. But to even that shows you he has the moxie. A lot of guys, they want to sit out if they have a broken fingernail. He played with bruised ribs. That happened when he was speared in the game against Clemson and still won that game and went on to play against Alabama. But number 1 on the list, this guy broke records. Deshaun Watson, he broke his records down in Georgia, down in the state of Georgia in high school. That's Clemson's Trevor Lawrence, Big C. He's going number 1 to the Jaguars and will get a chance to lead a turnaround of that franchise the same way that I think it was Bart Brunell came out of University of Washington back in the day when they were very strong in the playoffs, Big C. That's gone over a decade and a half ago. But think about this. When you think about what he's done, the great Trevor Lawrence has everything NFL teams want in a starting quarterback, from size to arm talent and the ability to process reads and make the right throws. I remember also in a playoffs game, as a tall, skinny kid, he's very athletic. He ran about 70 yards on a touchdown against Ohio State in a bowl game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the last 2 quarterbacks you named, Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, they're both out of the state of Georgia. They were the number 1 and 2 high school quarterbacks in the country when they left out the same year. And now you're looking at them potentially could be the first 2 quarterbacks taken in the draft, growing up basically about 60 miles from each other, Charlton. But when you think about Trevor Lawrence, he won a national championship as a true freshman quarterback at the University of Clemson. I mean, he's been all the goods that's been delivered in that one package, Charlton. He's what everyone dreams of. You want that statuesque white quarterback in the NFL that can bring all of those guys back to the top of the crescendo. He has all the tools. It's just a matter, what can Urban Meyer do with him down there in Jacksonville? Can he surround him with enough personnel over the first couple of years of his career to not have him damaged?
I think it's going to be great in the NFL. Even if it takes a year to get going. Justin Herbert came out of Oregon, got a chance to start for the Los Angeles Chargers, and at the same time, he became NFL Rookie of the Year because they gave him the opportunity. I think Trevor Lawrence needs that same opportunity as well as Justin Fields. I really feel that Lawrence and Fields are the top 2 quarterbacks out there coming up in the NFL, but it may not be looked that way by all the media, but that's just my opinion. I also want to congratulate the great Eddie George, Hall of Famer Eddie George, running back, came out of Ohio State, the Buckeyes, Big C. Also helped with the great Steve McNair, Big C, get the Tennessee Titans to a Super Bowl where they lost to the, at that time, St. Louis Rams. He becomes the head coach at Tennessee State. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, he's the Houston Texans and Houston Oilers and Tennessee Titans combined all-time leading rusher, all Heisman Trophy winner out of Ohio State, Charlton. This is a tremendous opportunity for young black men to get a start as head coaches in collegiate football. Even though they got to go to the sub-football conference level, Charlton, to historical black colleges, you got to get your foot through the door in any kind of way. And hopefully all this, just like with Deion Sanders, Charlton, will help with the recruiting to these historical black colleges, that they have credible leadership from these former NFL All-Pros, Charlton, and they can do a great job on the recruiting field, and they can let these young men, when they go to their households, if they have aspirations of getting to the next level, you have gentlemen that are speaking that have spent their career there that can advise them and mentor them in getting there.
And sometimes you just you knock on the door You don't ring the door, but you knock on the door with that Super Bowl ring. Okay, sometime that might get their attention. I wish them nothing but the best. I want to close out today with the NBA because NBA is fantastic. I want to run down today's schedule, and then I want to ask you about the game that happened in Brooklyn where the LA Lakers came to town, and they said there's a new sheriff in town, and he's coming without 9 of his homies, but they still got a 25-point beatdown of the Brooklyn Nets, Big C. It's ironic that people keep challenging, oh, someone else is the MVP of the league. Maybe it's the Joker. You know, maybe it's Dollar Dane. Maybe it's my friend from Philadelphia, Joel Embiid. Last time I checked, when Harden doesn't play, Brooklyn tends to lose games. It's all fair and level war. Tonight, the Lakers are taking their act on the road. And the Big Apple, Big C, Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks, that's worth a pause and just getting the feeling of the Lakers coming in off of a big win in New Jersey. Now they're actually in Brooklyn. Now they're trying to go on to Madison Square Garden and do the sweep of New York. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you know, with Harden not in the lineup, it speaks volumes for itself. I mean, everybody wants to give kudos to KD and Kyrie, but Charlton, James Harden is the pseudo leader of that organization.
Yeah.
When he's out there, there's a difference between night and day in the play, and whatever they lost by, that's the number of points that Harden did not have in the lineup that day. And so you take very little from the win, you take very little from the loss.
Yeah.
Because the season has a long ways to go. It gets down to the playoffs at crunch time when you have all your horses in the lineup.
Yeah, it's all fair and level war. I think that win was a bigger win than people would give it credit for, a Big C, without Davis and James in the game. Philadelphia at Dallas. Luka Doncic trying to do his thing against the great Joel Embiid. San Antonio at Orlando. Chicago's at Memphis, Big C. Sacramento's at New Orleans. Washington is at Utah. And the Utah Jazz looking pretty strong again with the top record in the NBA. Denver's at Golden State out here in the Bay Area. And then Houston is at Phoenix, Big C. Washington sometimes can sneak up on people. The great Russell Westbrook, last time he was up in Utah, I think a fan got thrown out for heckling him. You think he's going to show up and play hard tonight, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Russ plays hard every night. I mean, this is a man that's the master of the triple-double in the NBA. I mean, he hasn't been able to get his team to consistent win seasons, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when he goes out, he plays hard every night.
Yeah, he goes out and plays hard every night. I really love NBA basketball. I wouldn't think that in Major League Baseball they would allow someone to get robbed on Hank Aaron Day down there in the beautiful ballpark in Atlanta, Big C. But even the whole Philadelphia Phillies team, they know their player was out. But that's, there's no, I guess they say it's all fair and level war, but that was not right. If you don't believe in having the videotape be conclusive, then get rid of the videotape replay. That's just my opinion. NBA basketball is fantastic. NFL football, everybody's talking about who's going to be the best player. And then we have a new Masters champion who does not speak English, and that doesn't go over well with the good old boys down south. But it's all fair and level war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I want to pay homage to those professional sports teams in the state of Minnesota for canceling their games tonight, to pay respect to the citizens of that state, demanding that they all be treated like citizens, like people, like with equal equality in that state, Charlton, something that Minnesota has had a hard time trying to achieve and administer to all its citizens equally. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders, Charlton. They administer to all the citizens equally. Why can't law enforcement do the same?
We all got to know the dirt will come out in the wash. It will always come out in the wash. Put it in the wash every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.